He has made us all uniquely. We are fearfully and wonderfully made, and God has given us unique skills that are designed for work that He has designed for us.
Welcome back to Answer the Call podcast, where we help Christians faithfully discern their calling and translate that into a practical and purpose-filled career. Today, we have another client success story, and I'm joined by Tamara, who I know is an avid listener of the podcast, so that's exciting. You get to be different, taking a different seat on today's episode, listener to podcast guest of honor, really, and you're here ready to share your beautiful journey. So I'll give a quick intro because after nearly 28 years with the same company, it was time for Tamara to move into the next stage of her career. That's when we started working together. So she's here and ready to share about this later stage career change and how she eventually found very distinct clarity while in motion. I'm going to talk about a little bit more about that later on. But God really made everything all clear to her, made everything, or I shouldn't say everything, made a lot of things make sense, right? So Tamara, I'm excited to have you here. We're going to get into the whole story, but can you just share a brief overview of what you were doing before in your career and what you're pursuing now?
Yes, thank you so much, Audrey. I appreciate that. So yes, I was with Wells Fargo for a little over 27 years, as you said, almost 28, and was a program manager. I was managed high priority initiatives for the company. And Wells Fargo did make a decision, a location strategy. And so they did eliminate several hundreds of positions, and I was, all part of that job elimination. So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So you were in this career for over 27 years, almost 28, faced with the situation where you had to leave, you had to start something new. God was speaking pretty directly to you through that. So can you take us back to before career coaching, as you're coming out of this nearly 3-decade long career, what were you feeling? What emotions or challenges were you navigating during that season?
Yeah. So initially, it was somewhat of a relief because being in a high priority program office, if you will, it was very stressful. And so it was nice. And I knew this was coming. I knew the elimination was coming. So I was a little bit prepared. So it was nice to be able to just step back and just take a little breather, if you will. But at the same time, it was also, I had feelings of rejection, as well as some fear about what was next. I wasn't ready to just hang up my job, if you will. I wanted to continue to work. I really believe that God does want us to work. He created work for us. And so I think that was extremely important. So I had a lot of those emotions, and it did take me a little while to kind of work through all of that. You were very instrumental in helping me through that. So I really, really appreciate that. At one point was kind of wrecked with fear, if you will. And so being able to kind of work through that with you, really be able to essentially get on my knees, get in the Word, get in God's Word, and really kind of work through some of those things. It really did help me to realize I still have a lot to offer. I don't have to be afraid of something new, and be able to kind of think outside the box, look at my unique skills that God has given me, my unique talents. And so that was extremely important as I went through this process.
Yeah, absolutely. I first want to thank you for that vulnerability of sharing just the raw emotion of rejection and fear. I think so many people feel that as well, but maybe are scared to even admit that, right? And they just go into autopilot, got to get the next job, got to get the next job. And I really uh, respect and admire how you laid that all down at the feet of the Lord and said, like, this is what I'm feeling. And it sounds like, because I wanted to ask you, what really helped kind of shift that emotional weight as we started coaching, but you already spoke to that a little bit, and it sounds like it was just diving straight into it, like not ignoring those feelings, saying, this is what I'm
Mhm.
feeling, and I'm diving straight into the deep end and actually just going to address all of it versus running away. Does that feel
Yeah,
true?
absolutely. And we have such a gracious God who loves us so much and he delights in us. And he did provide some tools that I could leverage. I read a book called the Mediterranean Rules by
Yeah.
Robert Morgan. That was extremely helpful, and it talks about all of the things that Paul went through on his various journeys and how he overcame that. And then through different stories of other people throughout history who have faced adversity and how they came through it on the other side. So, we're not promised a happy-go-lucky life. Everything's not going to be a bed of roses, but I do believe that God is gracious and um, will provide those tools that you need. Provide whether it's people or books that people have written, or different things that He provides along the way to help us kind of get through those problems. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, I think you're really perfectly explaining how a career transition is not just leave one job, get another job. There is,
Mhm.
if you let there be, there can be a complete character refinement and transformation part of this.
Mhm.
And how do you think? I'm curious to hear more about this career change coming, almost 28 years after you started versus a career change maybe in your 20s or your 30s. How do you think you approached it differently than maybe you would have if you were younger?
Yeah, well, and I think when you get to this point in your life and your career, it's like, okay, well, maybe I want to go ahead and retire.
Mhm.
And so those emotions were going through my head. Um, I have worked just about my whole entire life. I think I first started working, when I was a teenager, babysitting, and then I worked in a daycare and those types of things, and had other different jobs when I was in college, and then right out of college worked. So I've worked my just about my whole entire life. So then coming to a complete standstill with not having anything to do to go to every single day. I've always poured my whole being into my work. So I was somewhat of a workaholic. So that was probably not very healthy. But at the same time, I had something to do every single day, every moment of the day, if you will. And so that was, I had to kind of work through some of those things. So being at this end of my career, it's like, okay, well, maybe I do want to retire. But I think I've always volunteered, but you can only volunteer so much. I needed to be able to feel like I was making a contribution to society, make improving our country, making a difference for the kingdom. And so there were a lot of different things that went into kind of my thought process. So being on this end of my career is like, okay, well, maybe what do I want to do? Do I want to get back into the grind every day, or do I want to contemplate doing something completely different? So I wanted to make sure that I was doing it in the right way and taking the right approach. I didn't want to just kind of do things willy nilly. That's not in my chemical makeup. I have to have a very logical approach to things, the way that
Mhm.
I do them. And so making sure that I was using the skills that God gave me, looking at various skill sets that I have, just made logical sense for me. So, but
Mhm.
I did have some, at this time in my life, it did present some opportunities to think, well, maybe I could retire, but no, I'm not going to retire. I probably won't ever retire. Yeah.
That word never came up in our talks. Like, retirement's off the table.
Yeah, it
Tamara's
really
ready to work.
is. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just figuring out what avenue you wanted to.
Yeah.
work through. So it sounds like you have a new or clarity and a sense of purpose look different during this career transition than maybe if they would at other points in your life.
Yeah. And I think if maybe I were in, my 30s or 40s, that would have been a different story. But I think at this time in my life, I did have a little bit of flexibility. And so I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so great. And I do see, I see people in all different situations, but something that remains pretty consistent is people have more flexibility than they think they might. And I say that really loosely because there's people dealing with, like I said, a lot of different kinds of situations. But when
Yeah.
they do have flexibility, sometimes they're afraid to use it because they feel guilty or they feel like they don't deserve it or that it's really a good gift and they have to kind of just throw it away for whatever internal reasons. So I think it's a beautiful testimony to share, like, flexibility and having that uh,
Hmm.
as a using that as a gift to make a really intentional transition versus just making kind of a chaotic and sporadic one, even when you do have the flexibility. So I
Yeah,
think that's beautiful.
exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So initially, when we were deciding what that next path was going to look like for you, we had decided executive assistant. It was a really good fit for given what you like to do, given your
Hmm.
specific skill set and your background too. So you were actually in the motion of pursuing that route when a
Hmm.
couple conversations started to change your whole perspective. So can you talk about what did it feel like to decide on a route and then feeling a prompting from God to change direction?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think part of wanting to pursue being an executive assistant, I was doing that just because that's of wanting to stay kind of in the business world and not thinking that I could, do something outside of the business world because I've always been in the business world with my formal career. And then I started, I met a woman at a conference that was here in Birmingham, and she was talking about mentoring children on who struggle with reading. And I don't know, just God put something in my heart to really kind of think outside the box from my own perspective. This woman was doing this from a nonprofit perspective, and I was like, well, okay, well maybe that's something I could pursue because I love to read and I've always read. I can't imagine my life not reading. And so when I started thinking along those lines, and then I had another conversation with another dear friend a a longtime educator. She started putting those thoughts in my head about you could do this. And then I started having other conversations with people that know me, and they're like, you would be so great with that. I grew up in an educator's household. Um, I have been a corporate trainer before, loved that. I teach Sunday school. I've taught Sunday school for several years. And so it has been part of my makeup. I love that. And so once I realized, oh, this is a distinct possibility. So I started looking into it. And then once I started pursuing that, all of these doors started opening. But the doors weren't opening for anything from a corporate perspective. I was not getting anything from any of the jobs that I was um, applying for. The doors were just not opening at all, but they were opening on this pursuit of education. And so it was like, okay, all right, Lord, then this is where you want me. So I did have clarity, and I do have that peace about this,
Mm.
and that peace that that passes understanding. So
Right.
that was, to me, that was a green flag, if you will. Okay, let's move on.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is such a powerful part of your story because, like I mentioned in our introduction, you were in motion, you were moving towards something, and God changed your path. And what I get to talk to people about a lot is why it's important to get into motion so God can direct your steps when so many
Yes.
people are trying to just stay seated until God tells them what to do. You
Yeah.
move forward in faith, and that was met so beautifully with the faithfulness of God to just direct
Yeah.
you somewhere else and
Yeah.
really clearly direct you somewhere else. It wasn't met with any confusion, uh,
Mm-mm. Yeah.
and met with clarity, I guess. So what benefits would you say came out of clarity being revealed, I guess later, I'm using air quotes, later than maybe you would have initially wanted. Everyone wants the clarity right away, right? But what benefits come out of clarity now that you are on this side of the story and you see what you had to go through to get to that clarity?
Yeah. I think the benefit is knowing that I am right where God wants me to be,
Mm.
and using the skills that God has given me. He has made us all uniquely. We are fearfully and wonderfully made, and God has given us unique skills that are designed for work that He has designed for us. I love the book by Jordan Rayner. It's one of the books that I read when I was first left the bank, Master of One, where God has given us the ability to be able to master one thing and one thing well. That, maybe, who knows what it might be, but it's knowing that God has made me uniquely, that and I have the skills to be able to do those things. So it's that piece of knowing that I'm exactly where God would have me at this point in my life.
Mm, that is really cool. I don't have a better way of saying that. It's
No,
just
it really
cool.
is. It is
Yeah.
really cool. And you just have that peace, and I'm not in turmoil. I'm not, oh, I've got to be pursuing this. I'm not doing this. I'm not doing that. But yeah, I'm right where I need to be. And I have that calmness that only can be given by that godly peace.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And I can see it. I can see it in you. It's beautiful. And how cool is it that God knew exactly every step he had to take you along this journey?
Hmm.
And he couldn't give you that clarity right away because you wouldn't be able to receive it right away in the way that you're
Exactly.
confidently and peacefully receiving it now.
Yeah.
And that's something that I really encourage people to pay attention into their own story is that God doesn't waste time. He does not waste
Mhm.
time. He doesn't waste his efforts. He doesn't waste your efforts.
Mhm.
Everything is coming together. Just keep moving forward. Keep taking those steps, and I think you've done that so wonderfully. So you mentioned before God creating you for more than just a job. So what does calling mean to you now?
Oh my goodness. Calling means following after God and trusting the Holy Spirit to lead and guide you every single day. And that God has called us to this life. He's given us this life. I don't know that I'm answering your question fully, but calling it's not just having a job, it's having purpose.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
your purpose may be to wash windows so somebody can look out a window that's clean. God, your purpose may be to teach children so they can grow up to be productive citizens. It may be that God has called you to be a pastor, to shepherd a church. But it's more than just going to work every single day, getting a paycheck. It's about living a life of purpose. I think that's probably how I would um, frame that as a calling, is
Yeah.
living on purpose and
Yeah.
living intentionally.
Beautifully said. I realize asking you to define calling is a really big question. And you did that beautifully.
Thank you.
So, how does this next step in your career help you live out your calling?
I think it'll allow me to just as I said, live with purpose and intention.
Mhm.
What an opportunity, and we talked about this the other day and hadn't thought about it. What an opportunity to not only teach children, but potentially give break to a teacher that might need that break,
Mhm.
or who may be sick, and be able to help that teacher cover their class while they need to be out. So it's not just helping me, but it's also helping others as well.
Mhm. And can you talk about how music comes into this?
Oh yes. So I I have been. I think I came out of the womb singing. So I love music. I can remember even from an early age, going to music class when I was in kindergarten, and singing in church. I just have always done that. I love it. And so when I was talking with an educator friend, she said, "Oh, you know that you'd be able to." Fill in for a music teacher. And I hadn't thought about that before. And that's one of the things that I had put on my some of my assessments, that I love to sing and would love to perhaps even have that as part of my career. And so now I may have that opportunity to be able to utilize that gift that God has given me. So yeah, so
Yeah.
that's exciting.
That's so cool. And it's
Yeah.
your you stepping into substitute teaching allows you to have the variety that you're
Yes.
looking for. You get to help
Yeah.
with reading and you get to help with music and I guess maybe science if that's something you're interested in.
Yeah, I don't know about that. We might have to think about the math and the science thing.
Yeah.
That's really our God did not gift me with numbers, and with science is really kind of more logical. So that might not be too bad. But yeah, that's funny. I love
Yeah, we're over
that.
here on the arts side of
Yeah.
things.
But
The
one thing that I loved about my banking career, and I always enjoyed the doing something different. So with one of my favorite jobs was when we would acquire banks, getting to know different banks and how they function, and then incorporate them into our bank. But this is too gives me the flexibility, so I can potentially teach kindergarten, or maybe even middle school, or even high school potentially, and like you said, different subjects, and so it will still give me that flexibility. So
Mhm.
that's going to be very exciting.
Yeah, yeah, and then also the flexibility in your schedule to pursue
Yes,
uh,
yes,
other opportunities too, because you're very involved in your community
I
and
am. Yeah, very involved in my church. Volunteer for the American Cancer Society, and then we'll be volunteering, hopefully, in another community with a mentoring program that they have in place for reading. So that'll be exciting as well.
yeah,
Yeah.
so much purpose, so much fulfillment in all of that. I see it in your face. You are glowing, and
Yeah.
you're going to be teaching. I mean, next in the next couple months,
Ye-
hopefully. Quick turnaround here.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I can't wait to hear how it goes. But before we sign off here, can you talk a little bit about maybe to the person who's listening, who's on the fence about seeking help, or maybe they're feeling the same fears or feelings of rejection that you were feeling
Mhm.
um, before we started after you had left your job? What would you want that person to know?
Yeah. So I really do believe that the called career takes a different approach from other coaching, career coaching, businesses, I mean, you really do take a biblical approach, and you do give people the ability to kind of think about how they've been uniquely wired and designed, put that on paper, and then align those abilities with different types of jobs. Um, you also provide opportunities for weekly check-ins and prayer, which I can't imagine. I don't think I've ever seen another group do that. So you look at the person holistically, and then from a financial perspective, I think you are priced very reasonably.
Oh, thank
And
you.
I mean, seriously, to me, that speaks volumes. It doesn't mitigate the fact that, or negate the fact that y'all are very uniquely positioned to be able to help people at all aspects of life. But yeah, I think I found that one of the things that I also appreciated, that it was financially, it was very doable. And so I don't want you to think about that. Plus, you have different price points for different things. And so I thought that was also was great. But again, you look at the person holistically and then help them find their unique skills to be able to then align that with different jobs. And so that's one thing. And don't limit yourself. I personally feel like this should be done even before you start thinking about going into a career, even before you go to college. Do something like this to really kind of hone in on those things that God has designed you uniquely, and then pursue that. But again, you can do it at really any different point along your career path. Maybe you're stuck.
That's really, really kind of you to say all of that, Tamara. Our riches come from truly these conversations, seeing where you were when we started working together, in that fear and that rejection,
Mm-hmm.
and seeing now where you are glowing, my friend. You are ready to go out there and contribute and make a difference and build the kingdom. And that is
Yes.
more than I could ever ask for, to be able
Yeah.
to be along for part of that journey. That's really, for lack of a better word, it's just pretty cool.
Yeah, it
Pretty
is.
cool.
And I will say that you and Kelsey also reflect the fact that you are in jobs and have a career that you were uniquely designed for, and have been able to make a career out of that. And so I love that you're living it. You're not, it's just not speak, it is lived out. So that's the other thing that I really appreciated.
Thank you. I didn't realize I was gonna get such a hype up on this call. This is really exciting. But yeah, I always say, or I say very often when I'm talking about the called career and how I got into this role and that whole story, and basically, I guess my why, right?
Yeah.
Besides the obvious of building the kingdom and sending people out to where they were meant to serve and do what they're called to do. It's really coming from a place of, I feel so lucky and blessed that I get to do that. It brings in this responsibility that I need to now help people do that too.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a really cool responsibility to hold, and something that I
Mm-hmm.
feel very honored to share with people. So thank you for being part of our group here. Thank you for coming on the podcast and sharing your story. I have loved our conversation, and I pray that it reaches whoever needs to hear it. I pray it reaches a lot
Yeah.
of people, because I think a lot of people would benefit from hearing you speak. So thank you for being here, Tamara. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Audrey. It has indeed been a pleasure.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. To get an even more meaningful head start into your calling, head to thecalledcareer.com, where my fellow career coach Audrey and I have created a whole suite of free resources and tools to help you get clear and get a job today. For those who are definitely ready to land a job or start a business in the next 6 to 12 months, we're here to help you biblically and practically discern your calling through coaching, reflection, and deep market research. Identify the job that's aligned with it, even if you currently have no idea what you want. Rebrand your resume and LinkedIn to translate your background to appeal to your future boss. P.S. We take this off your plate and do this for you. Also, we'll teach you how to land referrals and get attention from leadership through networking. Again, if that makes you nervous, we have these emails and LinkedIn messages literally written for you so you don't have to sweat. We're also here to give you unlimited interview practice so you're prepared to address every elephant in the room and knock selling yourself out of the park. Then we'll round out with helping you negotiate your salary so you land thousands more. Just so you know, recent clients have gotten $8,000 to $50,000 salary increases, even though they were totally non-traditional candidates. That's because we specialize in helping non-traditional career pivoters land jobs they're ecstatic to serve in. It takes work, but we're here to see you through until the end, when we're celebrating that day that you send me an email in all caps and you say, "Kelsey, I got the job." Then you could be on the podcast. But I'll be here until then, keeping you accountable and encouraged by meeting with you literally until you land the job you want, even if that's up to 6 months from now within our program. Apply to join at thecalledcareer.com, and I'll see you next week here at Answer the Call. Bye for now.